episode 20 episodes of the podcast down.
I can't believe we've done 20. Feels like such a nice round number.
But
we're not stopping. We're going to keep it rolling, buddy.
Should we stop? Like, make a new podcast, 20 episodes, and then just make a new podcast.
Maybe this is when people go to different seasons. I know we've talked about that and seen that in different podcasts. So maybe it's time to do, after 20 episodes, we go to season 2.
You know, I was thinking maybe launch season 2 in 2023, but 20 episodes a season.
Yes, that would make
honestly,
sense.
Gabe,
too.
What do we know about podcasting though? It seems like just yesterday.
Not a lot.
It seems like just yesterday, you and I started up this podcast with our Apple headphones on and made an episode, and here we are, 20 episodes in, and I think things are going well.
2 kids with a dream, Zach, and now we're 20 episodes in, and you're just rolling, buddy. So I love it.
I don't know what that dream was, but let's roll with it. But Gabe, there is some big news coming out this week. There's some updates coming to Google, and when you think of updates coming to Google, that's not something you hear very often. But they're changing up the way you interact with search and the results you see. And I know you've looked into this quite a bit, Gabe, too. But I thought we should chat about this a little bit before we get into the big stuff with Facebook custom audiences. But what do you think about this new Google update?
I mean, ultimately, it sounds like a good thing. I don't want to say that I've done a ton of research on it, but I've definitely read. It's been a hot topic in marketing circles this week, and certainly seen a lot about it on LinkedIn, and read through some of the Google documentation about it as well. Basically, what they're trying to do is they're trying to push what they describe as, and I'm using my air quotes here for people who aren't watching on video, helpful content, which ultimately seems like kind of a good thing, right? Like, if there's helpful content that Google can push to you as you're searching for a particular thing, I don't know, that feels like a win, right? That certainly feels like a win from a end user perspective, which is what Google wants. They want to keep you in that platform, right?
That's totally it. And, I'm excited to see the new update because I feel like this is something that we could hype up and then it's total trash when it comes out and they go back. But I'm excited to see, they're focusing on, again, that user content, those authentic reviews, trying to best match, what you're searching for real. I feel like it's a bad term to use, but for real content,
Yeah, it's interesting how I think that's the big question, right? Is how are they going to define real content or helpful content? Because it's pretty ambiguous. So it's going to be interesting to see. And it's one of those things too, Zach, where it's not like a UI update on Instagram or TikTok or something like that, where it's very in your face. This is behind the scenes stuff in how search results are going to be shown on Google, right? But the UI is going to look the same. Just the results that you're going to see when you search for something are going to look different. So I'm not sure that we're going to see it. You know what I mean?
I feel like at some point, you're just going to notice either, hey, these results are much better now, or maybe the opposite, these results are trash. But to your point, Gabe, I feel like Google's one of those companies that will just never be able to do a UI change. Like, Google is Google, and it's not going to change without upsetting people.
Well, it's so simple, it's just that nice big Google Google logo at the top. And obviously they swap that out all the time with, whatever's happening in the world for that day usually. But this is the huge complaint about Google when they launched it, is people went, what is this? It's too simple. But in the irony of ironies, they've definitely won that battle.
Yeah, well,
sure.
I'm a Yahoo user. I don't use Google either anyway. So no, I'm not a Yahoo user. Don't repeat that. That clip's gonna come back and haunt me. But no, I'm excited to see the updates, Gabe. But really, we've got a big agenda today because we are talking about custom audiences, and we've talked about advertising on Facebook and Meta in the past, but I think people don't understand the full power behind the advertising tools Facebook has. So specifically today, custom audiences. And in the past, Gabe, we've talked about, hey, you can upload a list or use your Facebook pixel and build ads. But let's take a step back. Let's take a step back and look at the audience, the information that you're either uploading to Facebook or giving to Facebook, or in many cases, the information that Facebook already has. Custom audiences, very powerful tool. And some of these used to be called connections. If you were going and building an ad, you'd have connections and you could define the event. If someone's signed up for your event or responded to it, you can add that connection to your ad, so on. It's all moved to custom audiences now. So now we've got a dozen options for custom audiences. One of them, of course, is that list upload, but the rest of them is what we really wanted to talk to today. I know we've got the pixel on here too, and then just some of the other options too, Gabe. But I think people don't fully utilize custom audiences, or maybe they don't just understand the options available to them.
I think it's that second part, Zach, which is not necessarily understanding all of the options that are available. I think, and I will admit, I fall into this trap too. When I think about custom audiences, I think often about customer lists and uploading customer lists. And that is, I think, by far the most common way that people are using custom audiences. But as you said, there are a lot of different options here. And we kind of wanted to walk through, well, we're really going to walk through all of the different options that exist and hopefully provide some specific examples today of how you can use these different custom audience types based on where people are at in their journey with you. I think that to me is the most important thing as you're thinking about these different custom audience tactics, I guess, for lack of a better term, is each of them are very relevant based on where your customer is at in their journey with you. I know we'll talk about this later, but like a lead form is an example. If somebody's filled out a lead form, they're much farther along the customer journey with you. If you have the information that you're uploading from a customer list, obviously they are your customer already, and they're very down the path of customer journey, versus somebody who watches a 3 seconds of a video that you're serving up on Facebook. They're probably much earlier in that journey. And so thinking about each one of these custom audience types and how that fits into where people are at in their journey, hopefully we can provide some good examples and good thoughts around that today.
And one thing too, Gabe, I want to point out is all of these options we talk about today for custom audiences, they're relatively easy to set up. And by relatively easy, I mean, most of them are super easy. The most complex one is probably going to be the Facebook pixel on the website, which I think we go ahead and start out with that. Gabe, what can you tell us about custom audience number one, the website?
Yeah, so the website. So certainly I would agree. Maybe app activity would be the most complex, but pixel probably the second most complex. So when you start running Facebook ads and pushing people back to a specific website, you can set up a pixel. And what that pixel does is it allows you to then retarget those customers who have clicked on that ad, so that you can refocus on the people who have actually engaged with that ad in some way. And you can obviously have many pixels running at the same time based on different ads that you have running. And so again, when somebody clicks on that ad, they're going to be thrown into that pixeled group. And it's basically creating a custom audience list automatically for you, so that after a month or maybe a couple of months of running some awareness ads, you've got this subset of people that have actually engaged with those ads in some sort of meaningful way. And then you can retarget them to push them hopefully a little bit further through the funnel. How else have you seen pixels used in other ways, Zach? I feel like that's really
I feel like that's one of the big ones. I know people with online stores selling things might track, how far along buying that product you might be. So, I think of, maybe you're buying something on, and I don't want to name a specific company because I don't know who's using the pixel, but if you're buying something online, you go and you add that item to your cart. That's another thing that the pixel can track too. They can say, hey, they've added this to their cart. They haven't quite bought it yet, but they have, expressed that interest and added it to the cart. So I think the pixel is pretty powerful in tracking those web events like that. And like you said, the setup's not overly complex. There's tons of YouTube videos out there to walk you through it. It's just really defining, how do I want to use this? What data do I want from this? And building that pixel. Mm-hmm. And there are some cases in some industries you can't use the pixel, but I feel like for the most part, everyone listening to this today will be able to use that pixel.
Agreed. Yeah, definitely would recommend that. And you're right. I mean, there's tons of great resources out there to help you through the process if it feels a little bit complex. Speaking of one that may be a little bit complex, there is an app activity custom audience as well. So that would be actually focusing on kind of similar to Pixel, where somebody's taken some action, but it's an action in your app specifically. So if you're selling an app or providing an app to your customers, you can target people who have launched your app or have even gone to a specific page in your app. You could throw them into a different custom audience and then serve up ads to them, for maybe it's just an education ad to teach them about the app or something like that. Now, I'm pretty sure you know more about the Facebook SDK than I do, Zach. I'm pretty confident that one does require SDK setup.
Yeah,
correct?
that one does need something built into your app. So, Gabe, that might be something that's a little outside you and I's expertise. But if you've got a development team, if you have an app, you've surely got a development team or someone building the app. Talk to them about this. And, just a little bit of a side note, but if you're going to be making changes to your app, I highly recommend, if you're going to be doing this Facebook activity within the app, looking into deep linking too. Because with deep linking, if you're running an ad based on people who've interacted with your app, the link in your ad can link them back to a specific page within your app. So definitely, if you're going to be making changes to your app on an SDK level, integrate the Facebook SDK, integrate the deep linking SDK, but really make sure that if you're making changes to your app, maximize your investment there.
Yep, agreed. No, I think that's a great call out. And speaking of kind of deep linking and some of these other things, I think this bleeds into the next one, which is a catalog. So in Facebook, you can actually set up a catalog of the products that you sell. Now, there are some limitations if you're selling services. You can't necessarily set up catalogs for services specifically. But if you're selling physical products and people have clicked on an ad, made it into your catalog, maybe looked at a couple of particular items that are in your catalog, you can then circle back and again retarget those folks based on the action that they took and actually what they saw in the catalog. So certainly for e-commerce brands and things like this, people who are selling physical products, that's a fantastic one for custom audiences for sure.
Totally, Gabe. And that brings us back to one of the things I mentioned a few minutes ago, and that's the customer list, the basic custom audience. And that's when you go ahead and take that Excel spreadsheet or however you have your list and upload that to Facebook. You can also integrate with an API. So if you have some kind of data source too, you can push that information over to the custom audience too. But this is typically a list that you have rightfully obtained, hopefully, and uploaded to Facebook.
Yeah. And I think, as you said, Zach, this is probably the most common way we see people creating custom audiences. And these are customers that are already yours. You have some information about them. You probably have an email address. You likely maybe even have a phone number and a name and maybe even a physical address. So putting as much information in through that custom list process will help you improve your match rates, because the way that this works is if the email address that they've given to you matches the email address that they've given to Facebook to log in, then boom, we've got a match. And that's how you're going to, you're going to match those customers up. If you happen to be tracking multiple email addresses from a customer list, great, upload all of them, because, it may be gabe.peterson, at gmail.com. And then you may also have gabe.peterson1 at gmail.com. And I may have those both maybe my email address. So if you are tracking multiple email addresses, no harm in uploading both of those, because it's going to go through and try and match up with whatever email address it happens to find.
I love it, Gabe. Custom audiences. The last custom audience here, and Gabe, I don't know if we mentioned this at the beginning, but everything we've talked about so far is identified as a non-Meta audience. And what that means is that this information is not directly coming from Meta. I mean, the pixel, you can kind of say, hey, that kind of is because I installed this code, but the data's coming from your website. So we have one last non-Meta source, then we're going to jump into the custom audiences from Meta, and that's going to be the data that Meta has that you can use. So Gabe, the last non-Meta audience type is offline events. What can you tell me about an offline event?
So I think of this somewhat similar to a custom customer list, but based on you getting information from people who are coming through a specific channel. And let me give an example. So Zach and I work with a lot of broadband service providers. Many of them have physical stores that people came into, or physical, retail outlets that people will come in and actually sign up for service. You could create a list of all of your customers that have come in through the store and signed up for your service. And then you could serve up ads to, that specific group of people and really tailor that messaging to them based on the channel that that they came in through. So again, similar to customer lists, but again, targeting it again a little bit further based on the channel that you use to actually acquire those customers. As an example, a physical store.
Yeah, that's super interesting. But now let's jump into the meta custom audiences. And a lot of these used to be called, for my veteran ads manager users, a lot of these used to be called connections, as I mentioned. So when you go in and build the ad, beneath detailed target, you had connections. You could identify what that connection was. A lot of these came from that list. So that functionality has been retired, but it's moved into custom audiences. So you can still use it. But Gabe, I think I'm going to say one of the most interesting, but I feel like all of these are just super interesting. But one of the ones top list.
I'm pretty interested in this one though.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
I think it's pretty cool.
Video, and that's looking at people who have interacted with your video, who have watched a certain amount of the time of your video. I think this one's pretty cool.
I agree. I think this one's really cool. And especially as Facebook or Meta is clearly trying to push more into reels and, stories and some of these other, video-based content because of the competition that is coming from TikTok, I think this type of custom audience is going to become even more important. So the cool thing about this is, or a couple of cool things I think are, you can target people who have engaged with your video content specifically. So if you're running specific video ads, you can look at those people who have engaged with it. And the other thing that Zach mentioned there is you can look at sorry, let me say this slightly differently. You can categorize people based on how much they viewed that actual video content. So maybe somebody watched 3 seconds of a video. Maybe somebody watched 10 seconds of a video. Maybe somebody watched the video all the way through. You can categorize those different groups in this video custom audience. And if somebody's watched your video all the way through, they clearly are interested in what it is that you're trying to sell or, educate them, whatever it may be, right? They're clearly interested. Otherwise they would have bounced and not watched the full video. So you can filter that list even further to say, hey, I'm only going to focus a retargeting ad at people who have actually watched my video all the way through. I think that's a really cool way to take advantage of this particular audience.
Absolutely. And you should be using video content to begin with. But I will say, I don't think I've ever watched a Facebook video all the way through. So if you're trying to advertise to me, do not, use the video and use the full length as your custom
audience.
We'll
do the 10 second threshold for you.
Yeah. You got to keep it short because, I'm going to be scrolling here, but I think there's a lot of potential for that too. And Gabe, again, that is all coming from Meta. So if you have videos you're publishing to Facebook right now, think about how you can use these custom audiences based on how long or how much of the video people consume. I think that's just a very interesting way to build a custom audience.
Well, and to go back to the start of this conversation about where people are at in the journey, if you're putting video ads out there as, it's almost like a virtual billboard, right? Where, it's probably going out to a broader group, probably going out to a broader audience, maybe introducing you to a new set of prospects, something like that. Once again, you have those people who have engaged with that content. Well, now they're a little bit further down that buyer journey, right? So what can we do to continue to nurture them through that journey to ultimately have them make a purchasing decision? And I think this type of data can be really helpful for that group specifically.
Totally. I love it. But time to move on to the next one, Gabe, the Facebook lead form. That's if someone has opened or completed that lead on Facebook. And if you haven't done this on Facebook, it's just like building a regular ad. There's just a couple extra steps where you can, add those form fields into your ad too. But Gabe, what can you tell us about the lead form option?
So I really like the idea of this lead form option because oftentimes what we see is that people are running ads on Facebook, driving people back to a landing page that, hopefully gets them excited about signing up and then fills out a little bit of a form to express their interest in whatever it is that you happen to be selling. That's a lot of clicks, man. Like that's a lot of clicks for somebody to, they're clicking on the ad, they're actually clicking on the link, then they're going to that website, they're looking at the website, and then they're hopefully filling out some sort of form. If you can get them to express interest in a lead form just based off of your Facebook ad, great, because you're likely going to see a lot higher completion rate of that lead form. And what's cool too is once you've created that lead form, and Zach mentioned this just a moment ago, but if somebody's opened the lead form, but they didn't complete it, you can actually target people specifically based on that action. So there'll be a set of people who did complete the lead form, and obviously you'll want to reach out to them to, hopefully contact them about whatever it is that you happen to be selling. But for the people who opened the lead form but didn't go all the way through to complete it, again, they're a little bit further down that buyer journey, and it's a great opportunity for you to retarget that kind of specific group.
And the next one, Gabe, here on the list is instant experience. And to be honest with you, this is not one that I've used much, or I can say I'm the subject matter expert on the instant experience.
Yeah. We might be moving past this one then quickly, because I'll be honest, I don't have a ton of insight into instant experience either. I don't know if these are, situations where people are like launching a Facebook Live video or launching an Instagram Live video, something like that. And so you're getting that instant interaction of, folks who are potentially engaging with you. I honestly don't know. I need to learn a little bit.
Yeah, I can honestly say I've never run a custom audience based off an instant experience. So I don't want to speak too much on something I'm not well knowledge of. I can't believe I almost said that.
Yeah, same.
But
Same.
I just haven't used the instant experience. So if someone has used the instant experience to advertise, definitely reach out to Gabe and I. And I know we'd love to hear about it. And, we can read about it online all we want, but I'd love to see what everyone's doing, not just with instant experience, I guess, but with all of these ads or these custom audience options.
Yeah, with all these, I definitely would be curious for sure. And I think, maybe instant experience isn't the place to start when we're talking about some of these other custom audience options, right? I'd really look at, video, lead form, some of these other things that we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes.
I think the second half of this list, Gabe, of what we want to talk about is really where we're going to hit our stride. Really what people should be using, along with video. I love the video one too, but just continuing on. I love all of them.
Yes.
Custom.
Yeah, we've already spent too much time on instant experiences, which we don't.
I was going to say it's the longest.
So
we spent the most time, and we don't know anything. But shopping, that's the big one, right?
Shopping.
Someone
yes,
has the intent to buy. They've interacted with your shopping experience on Facebook and Instagram. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory.
Agreed. Yeah, so similar to catalog, but there are these shops that can be built in directly into Facebook and Instagram and things like that. So again, as Zach said, great example. You've got this person who's got a much higher intention to buy because they've engaged with some content that you have on your shopping page in Facebook or Instagram. So you can again then retarget those people and try to ultimately pull them through to a purchase. Maybe they just need a small discount, right? They're really close to making that purchasing decision, and if you gave them a 10% discount to make their first purchase, that would be the thing that compels them to just nudges them over, pushes them over the edge to actually make a purchase. So again, thinking about, I realize I'm a broken record with this, but thinking about where people are at in that journey and how you would compel them to kind of end up making that purchasing decision based on where they're at.
Spot on, Gabe. That leads us into the next one. And this is one of my favorites too. I feel like I've said that on every single one of these custom audiences.
Yeah, you got to pick a favorite.
Good.
Can't be like your kids, Zach.
I can't pick a favorite. It's also good. But Instagram, Meta owns Instagram. So you have all of that data too. So what you can do is you can pull in people who have interacted with your profile on Instagram and make that into your own custom audience now.
Well, then we've talked about placements in the past, right? In previous episodes. So this is again, really important where your folks who are engaging with you on Instagram are probably used to seeing your content in a very different way. So serving them ads on Facebook newsfeed to somebody who typically engages with you on Instagram is probably a waste of money. So you really want to be thinking about where are people engaging with you? And then how do we serve up ads to them based on those placements? And I'm just not a fan of automatic placements. I think it's very wasteful, especially when people are not considerate about the type of content that they're putting into each one of those different placements. Mm-hmm. So that's where I think pulling this data from Instagram and making sure that you're targeting people back on Instagram and in the appropriate formats is really, really important.
Gabe, I hate to say it, but this might be my favorite one now.
I know. I really like this one too. So you talk about this one because I know you're really excited about this idea.
It's either number one on my list. It's top 5 for sure. It's either number 1 or number 2, but this is events. And, Gabe, I mentioned that I've been doing some projects here around events and, trying to think of how we can promote different things. And the events custom audience to me is just fantastic. what you can do with the events is if you go on Facebook and you create an event, maybe you have, I don't know, you've got something going on downtown this week. What you can do is you can say, hey, Facebook, let's look at who's responded to this event. Who's interested, who said they're going. And you can tell Facebook to serve up ads based on that criteria too. So if you have a football game on Friday and you've got 200 people interested and 500 people going, maybe we talk to those people who are interested and see what we can do to compel them to come to the event. Or maybe there's something happening at the event you want to advertise and promote too. You can use all this event data, and there's more than what I just talked about too. You have to really log on and see all the options. I can't just share my screen right now, but there's just so many different options with the events. But I think the big feature there is saying, hey, who's interested in my event, who's going to my event, and who's otherwise engaged with my event on Facebook. Facebook event advertising to me is just, I love it. If you have something happening, definitely make a Facebook event about it.
I think it's a great call. And that's one of the things that we see with a lot of the service providers that we work with, Zach, is they're very involved in the local community. They're at the fair, they're at the high school, football games or basketball games or whatever. They're out in the community at these local events. And it's such a fantastic way for you to continue to kind of join those two things together, right? The fact that we're a local company in the community, you're driving it on social, hopefully driving people to the event, helping them understand how you're supporting the event, perhaps. There's just so many different ways that I can see broadband service providers specifically, especially those who are involved in their local community, really leaning into this event-based trigger or event activity to drive more engagement.
And Gabe,
if
it's a ticketed,
so I'm with you. It's a great call.
And if it's a ticketed event, everyone who's interested, they need to buy a ticket, So if they need to buy a ticket, there's your custom audience, pull a list of who's interested and do that as well. I mean, it's so powerful. And again, it's just another great way to promote an event rather than just putting a post on Facebook and saying, hey, we've got, XYZ happening on Friday. Go onto Facebook, create that event and say, hey, this is everything that's happening, share with your friends, show that you're interested, show that you're going. And spread the word that way too. I think just creating that event is fantastic.
Well, this leads us nicely into the next one, which is people who follow your Facebook page or have interacted with your Facebook page. So one of the things that I think happens a lot is people will go on and follow a page, but then because that page doesn't necessarily get a lot of interaction in an organic way, they aren't necessarily going to see the content in that feed. And so this feels like a great way for you to potentially push your customers back to your Facebook page or your followers back to your Facebook page via an ad. Now, you may have to spend a little bit of money to get people back to that page, but once they're back on the page, then they're going to start to see the organic content. They're going to start to hopefully engage with some of that organic content, maybe events that you've got going on, whatever it is. But it's a great way for you to pull your followers into a custom audience, advertise to those followers to go back to your Facebook page, get more engaged so that as you're putting out organic content, it's much more likely to be seen by those followers.
I was going to say, I love that one too. I love all these, as I mentioned, but I think that kind of rounds us out to the last custom audience from Meta. And if we're being honest, this one's probably not that I have a least favorite. This is probably like the least exciting, ending on a low note here, but Facebook listings. So Facebook listings. And we've talked about
I think it depends on what your business.
Go ahead, Gabe.
Yeah, I think it depends on what your business is, right? If you're selling physical products, then I think some of these things around Facebook listings, the catalog, the shopping experience, I think can be very applicable, right? So it really depends on what it is that what product or service are you actually selling to your customer?
And I'm biased because I don't have physical products to sell. So when I see like these catalog ads, I'm just thinking like not my favorite compared to the others, but definitely a strong use case behind it as well.
For sure. I think it's a really important use case, especially for specific types of businesses, right? And again, if you're selling physical equipment, maybe you start selling cameras or, something like that, right? That's actually, something where you could start to use some of these other portions of Facebook. But if you're a broadband service provider, like many of the folks that Zach and I work with, I would probably focus on some of the other things, the video, the lead form, the event-based triggers, as Zach was talking about. I think there's some other higher priority items for sure.
Definitely, and that's really all of the custom audience options on Meta, both with metadata and data you provide. But it comes down to a question, Gabe. I think we asked on episode 1 is back to Facebook. But when you're advertising on Facebook, don't just go on and boost a post or throw money behind an ad with no real objective. Know your different audience types, know where you can source this data from, and know how you can build this into an ad and build that, because you can optimize all of these ads using all this information. And I imagine everyone listening to this podcast has access to really everything we talked about today. Like, you may not have a customer list, but you have the ability to gather that information. So definitely just understand, these custom audiences and how to use them. And, don't just blanket advertisements. That's one of my biggest pet peeves, that sure. Boosting posts. But, I'm just a fan of advanced
I mean, look, there's a place... There's a place for boosted posts, right? I mean, unfortunately, Facebook is kind of a pay-for-play application, and if you want to drive organic reach,
and don't get me wrong, like
you probably got to.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, boosted posts aren't just like terrible, but like they really push that one in front of you see the post and you see like that big blue boost button, and people want to click it. But I mean, look at all the custom audience options you have, and the data and what you can do with it. So I'm big into using the data you have and understanding your subscribers, understanding your customers, whoever that audience may be. But I'm just really big into custom audiences too. And Gabe, I know you are as well.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan for sure. And I want to go back to a point you just made, Zach, about the boosting posts. So Facebook and Instagram both make it really easy to boost a post. As you said, there's that big blue button right there in the middle that just says boost, and you can make it, and you can just do it, right? It's super easy. But it's also kind of lazy. And I think, unfortunately, oftentimes it becomes the easy/lazy thing to do. And so it's the thing that many folks fall back on, versus digging into this in a little bit more detail, into things like some of these custom audience details and options that we talked about today, that frankly are going to be much more effective for you in the longer term. They just take a little bit more work, but
it's all easy. Like,
it's a little bit more work.
I wouldn't, some of this stuff sounds complicated and whatnot, but I mean, it's super easy to do. Again, outside of maybe the pixel and the SDK, like, this is like, we're talking minutes, minutes here.
Yeah, it really is, right? Like, even the video one, there's a nice drop down of, okay, here's the different options that you want. Do you want, again, people who viewed 3 seconds of a video, or people who viewed 10 seconds of a video? Like, it's, as you said, it's a very easy process. It's minutes. Yeah, it's maybe not seconds like a boosted post is, but it's not 3 hours to go create all these custom audiences. And I know I've said this multiple times as we've gone through this conversation today, but this is where understanding your customer journey and where that person is at, and what is the best way to use each one of these tools to get messaging in front of them based on where they're at in that journey. If there's one thing that people take away from this conversation today, I really hope it's that use these different tactics and techniques to align to where your customer is at in their buyer journey with you.
Gabe, I think that's spot on. If there's any takeaway from today's episode, it's use your custom audiences, or go out and just see what custom audience options you have. That's really the main goal here. And again, not to hate on the boosted post, use it if you need to, but definitely look at the custom audience options. There's so much you can do with them. And that's really all I had to say, Gabe. Anything else you want to add?
No, just as you said, go do some more custom audiences.
Well, we talked about some of my favorite digital advertising tactics today with Facebook and Meta. So it was a good day for me, but just want to thank everyone for joining us today on this discussion on custom audiences, and really how many favorite custom audiences I have. Did anyone count how many times I said that? Maybe not.
I really think you said it on every single one except for one.
I think I did. Hey, yeah, it's the catalog one where I was like, I don't like this one, but
whatever. But yeah, otherwise you said it on every one.
I just love it all, man. But don't forget to give Gabe and I a follow on your favorite podcast app, and if you'd like, you can catch the latest video podcast on both Spotify and watch it on YouTube as well. But as always, feel free to connect with both Gabe and myself on LinkedIn. But that's all we had for you this week. We'll talk to you soon.